you now. So I'm going to give everybody a second to do that. There's so many ding. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I can hear it. It's great. So many lovely people. Good morning, and happy February. So glad to have everybody here. It's always a joy to kind of start the month off with you guys and some professional development. So as always, before we get started, I'm going to go over some general housekeeping tips and let this human in. There we go. Some general housekeeping tips and announcements. So please remember to keep your mics on mute unless you're asking a question or you're participating in the discussion. There's a good bit of folks on the call today, so we want to make sure we keep the audio clear for everybody. And then please go ahead and turn your cameras on if you have the ability and if you're comfortable. It's always nice to kind of see each other. It makes you feel a little less like I'm just like talking in my living room. So as far as announcements go, I don't think any of the other sponsors have anything to say, but the only thing I have to say is it is tax time. We love that. If you have any questions or anything, definitely feel free to go watch the last half of the professional development session from last month on our YouTube channel. Also, you can, I deleted it. Okay, well then I'm gonna wing this one. You can use VITA, which is it's like volunteer something tax assistance. It is free kind of in-person help. I will send that as a link in the chat in a second. And then also I'm pretty sure the majority, if not all of us, qualify for like IRS free file. So there's ways to get tax assistance and there's ways to like file taxes for free. Other than that, I think we will go ahead and get started as we go through the presentation today. Please remember to jot down any questions that you might have. Love an interactive session. So I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, Lily, to introduce themselves, and I hope we have a good question.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and get my presentation up. 1 second. Just confirm, can we see everybody? Everyone can see me okay? Great, thank you. So we'll be doing our social media marketing. I'm Lilly Gonzalez. Before we get started, I also want you to know that we'll be doing some polls today. So just to gauge your understanding, so be prepared to answer those. This will also, presentation has a lot of links in it. So this will be provided to you after the program. And feel free to use the chat option for any Q&A. I'll keep my eye on that. So a little bit about me. I have 8 years of marketing experience. Before that, about 12 years of customer service experience. And I'm currently the communication and marketing manager at Rosie's House, which is a nonprofit with a mission to eliminate barriers to high quality music education. So they're a free after school music program. And my role is to guide the organization's outreach to students, public, and the community at Rosie's House. My experience is also with the Grammy award-winning chorale, as well as some membership organizations. The Arizona Grantmakers Forum is a membership organization for the philanthropy groups, and then also the nonprofits. And they also run Arizona Gives Day. These two organizations merged and became the Arizona Impact for Good. So it's also part of that process. And I also hold a bachelor's degree of nonprofit leadership and management from the School of Community Resource and Development at Arizona State University. So I'm sure you guys will all have that very long name to say at the end of your bio soon. And so what brings us together today is just the innovative collaboration of University of Arkansas, as well as University of Alabama's and the Arizona Food Bank Network. So they also are the hosts of our awesome AmeriCorps Vista members. So just thank you so much for having me here. And I want to do a quick little poll just to gauge your understanding. So let me see if I can set that up in Zoom really quickly while sharing screen. I think I can. I do not have the option to create a poll on my side. Is that something that we could enable, or should I just kind of?
It's loading. I don't know if because it's not a host. Okay. Experience. Social media marketing. Okay, here we go. I'm just gonna put A, B, C, and D.
Perfect. And so like just to kind of guide your understanding, so if you've like managed your own social skills, your own social media channels, that'd be like a novice. It means you have some experience with the platforms, we haven't really represented a brand. Intermediate would be if you represented social media pages for one brand. And if you've done it for several brands, go ahead and do C. For advanced. And if you're expert, that means you've done it for several brands on several platforms. You feel super comfortable, just so I can kind of gauge on how specific I am. If you want to go ahead and get those answers in, I'd really appreciate it. Give everyone a minute to do that. And let me know when you feel like a lot of the answers have come in and we can go ahead and share those.
It's at 71% right now.
Perfect. Get a couple more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and show that poll.
Oh gosh, is that an end poll? Okay.
Yeah.
Teaching me
Like
too.
a show
I love
result.
it.
There we go. Okay, great. So it looks like we have a lot of people who've been kind of on the newer end of this. So this is going to be a perfect presentation for you. A lot of these links and resources I'm going to be providing for you are just going to be what I use on my day-to-day. So they'll be a great place for you to get started and make sure that you're ADA compliant, that you are looking at the size of text, and that you're also just kind of have the image quality. And I have like size guides, so you know what size header to do on this platform. So a lot of great resources for you. I'm really excited. Thank you for doing that. We'll go ahead and move on just kind of our agenda today. These are the things that you'll be taking away with you. We're doing a foundation of social media marketing in general. Then we'll kind of go into diving into understanding your audience and how you kind of get started in doing that. And then also platform selection of your brand. So not every brand needs to be on every platform and every place. So kind of really targeting where you'd want to be. And then any kind of challenges or things that you'd be facing, and then some other things I thought you should just take away with you as well. So these are going to be goals that just go to not just nonprofits, but most organizations. They're kind of all kind of guided by these for social media strategies. I mean, social media is a way to get out there to the public and connect with people. So building trust with your community, driving fundraising is going to be very big for nonprofits, kind of making something into an ask without actually asking is going to be something that you're going to do a lot. You might have heard and seen this in other classes, but generally you'd want to do 7 points of contact before you ask for a gift. So sharing something interesting, providing an update, all of those are actually guiding those fundraising efforts. So they're very important. Your job in social media is putting the fun and spice into all of that. So that way it's not just, can we have money? Can we have money over and over again? So it's going to be really great. You're going to want to keep these in your back pocket as you think about your creating content and why you're doing your work. And then to get started, you really want to know everything you can about the organization. So their expectations, what their goals are, understanding who you're working with and what capacity. You know, being a social media person, you might be the videographer, the graphic designer, the voiceover person, doing a bunch of other communications. So kind of knowing what you're doing, who you're working with, who you collaborate with is just important no matter what job you're in. And then learning about like what you have access to. Do they have video? Do they have B-roll? Do you have to provide that? Um, and then B-roll is just when you have a bunch of blank video, almost like stock video that you can pull that's unique to your brand. So those are very important to have. And then you want to see if you have like brand guidelines. Is that something you're going to have to create? What kind of imagery speaks to that brand? These are all things that you kind of want to get in your head as before you even start creating content. And then I think organization is like the number one thing because you're pretty much a product manager for all these different platforms and brands. So knowing what your tasks are is going to be like the most important thing. So I like to have a document with all my links in one place. I think that's really important for me to have. And then I have like a playbook that has any ideas or suggestions or hooks or trends. So that way I have them like handy. So kind of little bite-sized pieces that are relevant to your organizations that go off of your mission, almost like an extended elevator pitch. They're very helpful for social media. And they're like, did you know? Or things that are a little bit that are going to grab somebody's attention. You're always going to want to have like a list of those to go to. And then I would say social media calendars, there's hundreds out there. You don't have to create anything new. Just Google it and you'll find a bunch of resources. I provide resources for you of some as well. But finding something that works for you is really important. And then scheduling time to like engage. Like I have an hour every Monday and Wednesday and Friday where I just engage on social media. I like people's posts. I see what other organizations are talking about. I might like or share something. It's scheduling that consistent engagement which is going to make you successful. I'm going to say that being consistent and making you successful a lot through this presentation. Like if you're not going to take away anything else, like please take away that. It's what's going to change the game for you. And you also want to make sure you organize your bookmarks and your things like that so you can have really quick grab your links and your content because you'll be creating a lot and bouncing between a lot of different things. So you want to make sure that you have everything as reachable as possible. That will set you up to be the best social media manager you can. And then you also need to analyze the data. What like historically have they done? What haven't they done? Is there any trends within the industry? Like being a data nerd is really going to be helpful. And you can also do that during your 30-minute engagement or hour engagement time. It's just seeing what other people are doing, what's working, and seeing what is trending. That's all going to be very important. Doing some A and B testing, see what works, what doesn't. Try a certain voice, if you want to be a little bit more fun and engaging, or if you want to be a little bit more professional, to see who you engage with and how those relate to your audiences. And there's a lot to do on advertising. Or I would always suggest to see what other people are doing, what's successful in your sector, and just asking around is always really helpful. And here are like these 5 strategies that you're going to kind of guide all of your work. So no matter where you are within the organization or any organization, you're going to kind of want to start here. So, do they have social media accounts? What social media accounts do they have? Do they not have? For example, I came onto Rosie's house and they only had Instagram and Facebook. And I was like, you guys need to get on LinkedIn. That's just where all your board members are. There's nobody that's the only way they're going to share your content, engage within their network, and their network is going to be our donor network and our supporters and our sponsors. So that is one of the things that we decided to develop. And then you also want to know where identify your audience and their needs. Where are they going to be? The students are going to be mostly like on TikTok and things like that. So we're looking on trying to connect and share, what they can learn and get into Music Academy. So I think that's a really important part. And again, setting up that content calendar, being consistent and sticking to it, because you can set up a calendar and life gets busy and things happen. So don't overbook yourself. You don't have to post every single day. You can post once a day or once every couple days, depending on what your what your mission is, what your goals are for that organization, for that group. So for LinkedIn, for example, that's only once a week max, but Facebook and Instagram is where you have the most engagement. So I try to be there 3 to 4 times a week. And then we also, knowing your feedback, getting your data by doing reports. I think monthly reporting with your team, if not if not more regularly, is really, really important. So that way they know what's working. You can get feedback and you can get stories from your team and kind of knowing what's out there, because you're not necessarily the person that's connecting and doing all of the services. So you might not know what kind of FAQs are out there. And so it's just really important to connect with your network at your office as well and just see what other people are doing and sharing that information. So you also just want to like stay updated, do SEO updates, go ahead and go through your data quarterly and kind of see what's working, what's not, and making changes. It's really easy in life, just keep going. So it's important to kind of slow down a little bit and really go through those changes. So there's a lot here. I'm not going to spend too much time. This is really for you, resource slide for you. All these are going to be great links to find resources. So please open them when you do get this, when you get this after the presentation. But all brands work online, starts with creation, storytelling, uploading, and engaging. Uploading content is different for every platform, and you can get um, another kind of platform like Later or HubSpot that you can post things at the same time. So that can be really helpful for scheduling and to limit, things that are on your plate. You can kind of put things way in advance. But keep in mind, Instagram Reels aren't the same as Instagram Stories, and Facebook Stories are like Instagram Reels. So you have to know all that language and that content to make sure you're actually doing the things that you think you're doing, because you're really like, oh, I set up a story and then it shows up as a post and then it's on your grid. You might have a very meticulous grid that you don't want to have that showing. So just really knowing the platform and their requirements is really helpful. And then I also, this cheat sheet right here is going to be what I go to like constantly. So I really suggest for everyone to open that and see that. And it's very important to build a sense of community and trust. So don't forget about engaging with your partners and connecting with those followers. These last two steps is really going to create that community for you. And so when you're getting started, like consistency is what makes you successful. So engage with your audiences and interact with your followers, but getting that schedule done and what works for you is really important. And it might take 2 or 3 months. So give yourself that grace and flexibility to knowing what that might be. You know, I'm sure social media will only be one facet of your job. So you'll only be able to spend 20, 30% of your day on that. So kind of just keeping that in mind. If you're a whole 100% um, social media manager, it's going to be a lot more fun because you'll be able to spend a lot more time and devote that, that energy and thoughtfulness into that content. So we don't have to go ahead and start a poll. We'll just kind of share this. On these are kind of the ways that you can do social media audience insights and kind of gain information of your audience. You can use social media and online analytics. So Facebook Meta has a lot of great analytic tools. You can see where people are performing from, what state they're in. You can even find other interests. And then you can if you put in a lot of data, you can actually get a lot out of it too. There's also, SurveyMonkey and other kind of survey and poll tools. Just using a poll on Facebook is always interesting. You can get feedback by asking your emails or just asking, please comment and let us know any questions. And then, so I was just checking in the chat. And then any user personas is something that I've seen some organizations kind of get away from, because you don't want to be so specific on the audience that you're trying to go towards that you're ignoring everybody else. So that is something to be aware of when you do look at user personas. And so going into a little bit into these are the way tools that you can define your target audiences. So for data analysis, and analytics, you can look at these different things. For feedback, you can go ahead and see, what people aren't engaging with is also tells a story of things that they are engaging with. So it's, what you can also look into. And you're correct, SEO is search engine optimization. You're going to see that term a lot. So you can get familiar with that. Part of the resources I provide is also from HubSpot, a glossary of social media terms to get you kind of on board. So you'll go over more of that in a minute. So does anybody need have any more questions or details on these? Feel free to come off mute or put a question in the chat just before we move on. I know it's a lot of information, so I want to make sure, if you have anything, I'm aware of it. Any questions? Great. Feel free to put them in the chat. No problem at all. And so some other questions that you should think of when you're building your target audience. These are going to be the questions that you'll use to guide that. It's really useful when starting a campaign or finding a program, finding those niche audience, like who that's going to resonate the most with, because your audiences start with your big picture. It could be your state, it could be your, the section of the country you're in, maybe the Southwest, and then you can become more specific. So, for example, when I was working at the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits, there was a whole state organization. And so we had to think about the state as a whole, but we also have very specific areas within the state. We have this North state, the Central, and then we have South. And so kind of finding out who the spokespeople were for those areas and then drilling down more and more. So that's kind of how you can think of your audience members, who's the smallest group and who's your largest group that you'll be kind of going after. And that's going to help guide all of your, what platform you on, what their behaviors are, how you're going to interact with them, how you're going to ask them questions, what challenges that they deal with in their life that could spark your content. So, for example, for Rosie's house, meal security is a big problem for the families that go to our program. So we talk about how we offer free meals at Rosie's house for any families that are able through our partnership with St. Mary's. And so it's finding that pain point and then building that communication around that, so that way they find that solution at your organization. So we're about halfway through. We went through the foundations and kind of understanding your audience. Do we have any questions before we move on? Cool. We'll have a section at the end to go over things as well. So there's so many platforms out there, and there's just like a lot of different options. And so just keep in mind that you don't need to be everywhere at once. You can really be thoughtful of your capacity and say no. I would say saying no is probably really important, social media manager, because you want to be able to share your story well and not just share your story as fast as you can. You need to go back to it. You need to really, people might have missed the beginning of it. So you always want to tie in everything throughout it. And that consistency really helps tell that story. So it's going to be better to be on certain platforms than others. I kind of put our kind of OGs here, any kind of video platforms here, and then messaging services. So make sure that you're going to have a strong presence and not to be spread too thin. For example, like we have a WhatsApp for our families, but we don't need that for our public. Those are going to be just for our specific communications. We need to open that up to a wider audience. So where you start, you want to find out what platforms align with your brand identity and your values. So now that you know a little bit about your audience, you know the foundations of what your organization has, you can kind of get started on getting them out there. And so they might already have a Facebook. It's easy to add LinkedIn. I'm sorry, it's easy to add Instagram if they have a Facebook. And then if they're going to be on LinkedIn, there is also X. I've decided to stay away from X just because of a lot of the controversy going around the platform, but it might be a good place for you, especially if you want to, really get people talking and build some buzz. And then if your organization really wants to connect with a younger generation, you might want to go in TikTok, or if you're looking to target gamers or, that kind of tech field, then Discord or Reddit might be a better platform for you. And to kind of guide my work, I use this as a guiding just because it works for my organization. So we use these platforms in these ways. We use YouTube to tell our story. We can take clips of those and highlight them in our Instagram reels to really show our impact. And then we can use those also for Facebook to really get people sharing our content and building our following. So it's using that content that you have and pulling out different parts of it and using it for those platforms that it's meant for. Um, these are what I kind of see that just really help guide that. You're also on the platforms, it resonates with you. Keep that in mind because you are also, part of our grand audience. So you might not be interested in something, but you can see how it would resonate with somebody else. Or like, no, this is, or you can be like, this is it. No matter like who's interested, they're gonna respond to this content. So you're also going to have to adapt to these platforms. So once you kind of have your audiences, you meet them where they are, you go to those platforms, and then you can define your goals and how you're going to reach those audiences. So that means making, and like your goals should really be specific. So knowing what organizations or what goals are going to be really aligning with those platforms. So just being as specific as you can and how often you're going to go through those. And then you want to start tailoring that content for those platforms to resonate with those audiences. And so that's also where A and B testing is really going to be helpful. Does like a 30-second video work better than a 2-minute video? Obviously, those things are really going to be helpful. Like, do people like when you start in the middle of a story, kind of hook them in, and then you explain this whole story after that? So just finding what people are engaged with, what has the longest video watching time, those are all going to help you create your content to be more specific and resonate even more. So just watching those and keeping all those things in mind is really helpful. So the challenges you might face, I mean, nonprofits are going to be faced with many challenges, as you may know. Um, just from there's being in the situation of not having loads of money, and so some nonprofits are very lucky and they have a great structure, but some of them are very reliant on the generous donations that they have in their community, so really being aware of what that can also mean. And so there's going to be little resources might be something that you face. So that's another reason why, having that calendar, knowing your capacity and really being knowing what's best for you and to be able to do that brand is really going to be helpful. And you're going to know how to do that because you have clear objectives. So partner with your supervisor, your manager, the director of marketing, whoever the person may be, and really understand how your role is going to make that impact, and that'll help guide you so much on understanding what to do. And so knowing also like how often you're going to engage with your audience, maybe it's something you're going to have peak times. So if like the week of an event, you might be on it every day. There might be a slow time like during the summer months, or you might have a down season where you're going to be a little bit less. So just know when you're going to have more capacity for social media, when you're going to have less, and kind of gear that. That's really going to also be strong about knowing the organization's calendar. So if they don't have an editorial calendar or kind of a project calendar, that can be a really challenging part. So getting that kind of started and created is a really helpful way. So for example, at Rosie's house, we have a spring campaign launching in April, but we also have a new enrollment campaign that's from February to March. We're also doing a Make Music Phoenix all-day celebration of music campaign, and that starts from March to June. So really how you're balancing all those communications and getting those messages out to the right people at the right time is just a really important part of planning. And again, being consistent and active, especially when you do like social media advertising. The algorithms really want you to have consistent advertising. So if you're only advertising for like a spring or a fall campaign, that can kind of throw out your numbers. So doing a $5 campaign on something like a new enrollment where we wouldn't have a lot of budget for, but we have $5 to $10 to put some money on socials, that can actually really help us when we're ready to do our larger campaign. Because then we have that consistency in algorithms, and so they'll kind of push it on the top of people's feeds a little more often. So just keep that in mind when you're planning. And that's something that you'll also learn as you go. So if you're just check those analytics. What did you learn from this? What could you do better? Those are all really important things to frame your work. And knowing your organization's policies and guidelines. Maybe you use AI to help you do some like Chat GPT to do some copy for social media posts. That's fine, and you can definitely do that. But what's your company's policy on that? Is there how are you going to go through the bias? Are you going to catch that manually? Do you need to have an editorial team to help you identify? Because anything made by AI will also have a level of unconscious bias in it by the people who are developing it. So just keeping those things in mind. I'm sure we've all seen those, you ask for a philanthropist and it comes out with just a white man, an older white man over and over again. And that, that is a level of bias there. So just keeping those in mind when you're using those platforms and using this new technology, is this, really in policy with your organization? Does it go with their values as well? And then adapting to platform changes. I every social media report I think I've done from year to year looks completely different because Facebook or whoever has different tracking systems. They give you different kind of data. They do things a little differently. So figuring out how I can count things consistently for myself, knowing our own, return of investment or ROI is really important. So knowing that and taking the time to read those boring email updates of like Facebook has updated, here are the things that have changed. Actually taking the 5 to 10 minutes to read those is really important. You can learn so much, and then you can send a quick email to your team. Hey, this has happened. You'll have the authentic verification now from now on. Just something like that can kind of help. And don't forget about your sector. Like you're in a nonprofit, but like what is happening in that sector? Do you know what's happening in the whole education system of your state? What about environmental? Not necessarily you have to know all of these, but whichever one you're in, you should know kind of what's going on. So for example, at Rosie's House, we're a musical academy that's also a nonprofit. We're also an after-school program. So we care about, education from lower education to higher education. So elementary, preschool, pre-K. We want to know about what's going on in all those fields. How can, music help with like we have a mental health initiative where we're partnering with different local health providers to provide to use music and also other methods to ensure that our students have the mental health resources that they need and the tools, and the families have access to the tools to really help the students and have a holistic view of their health. And then this is also goes with your, not just your sector, but like, do you know what your districts are doing, your neighborhoods? Health initiatives or something that you need to be a part of as an organization. So there could be like a farmer's market happening downtown. Do you need to have somebody there to kind of share about what your organization does? Being part of the community is just really important. And so knowing where those people are and how to reach them, it could be a Facebook group, it doesn't always have to be in person, but keeping your ear out there is going to be something really important. And also, again, capacity, don't be working 24/7. If you need to do this, schedule time to make sure that you have some downtime as well. You don't work for free. So, I mean, sometimes you do because there's always internships. I did that. But, you really need to make sure you're putting yourself first as well. So, I'm always gonna say that. I think it's really important. And some key messages that I find really effective. So I like to break down my audiences. So for example, we have our families at Rosie's House, and then we also have our greater public, our donor base, our stakeholders. And so finding out like what do they do, what communities and groups do they work with, where are they focused? This is really going to help you know where you fit into this. So how do you help them? How does your work focus on things that they care about? So when you're able to answer those questions, you really provide a better detailed picture. And so, finding that succinct messaging, focusing on the organization, segmenting your audiences down in a, ideal world, you would have everything segmented down, but starting basic, like who are current people we talk to, who are the people we haven't talked to in 3 years, who are, that are interests that we're, connected, and who are the people who aren't even looking at us. Like those basic big things are also very helpful. So starting big and working your way smaller is what I suggest. Hopefully they have some sort of platform for you when you start, but I've definitely been there several times when they're like $1 million nonprofit, but they were like, oh, we don't really do that. And so knowing that you have that time to do it, it's also very important. And so this is where we get into the fun stuff. So good design really matters. And it's like the best part, in my opinion, like being creative and artistic and seeing what other people do and really applying that is just really fun. And it really entices your audience to really follow you and engage with you. We're a pretty quiet group, so I don't think we have any questions, but if anybody does have questions, feel free to let me know. Because we're pretty much at the end here, just like breezing through. And we're providing our resource page. So there's resources on those slides, so make sure to like capture those as well. But here are just some overall ones I'll be providing you as well. Some big ones that really shout out is Hootsuite. They've been doing it for years. They have the analytics and they are just a really great place to get started. HubSpot as well. They have the scheduling platform for you. I used to use it when I was a freelancer, very affordable, really fun. Their free version is also really good. Um, Regarding accessibility, knowing contrast between your colors is really important. You want to make sure, somebody who's colorblind could read your graphic and your content and what text size they need to be. So I included some of these accessibility checkers as well. Some newsletters to sign up for to make sure you're on trends, social media today, and then ICYM, totally forgot what it stands for, but it's really great. There's also some free online courses that you can take that I linked to. So Google has one for social media management that kind of gives you an overview of the platforms. So you can really see those a little bit more in depthly. And Coursera as well has a free one. I've taken them both. They don't take a lot of time. They're pretty good. They do give you a really good foundation. And kind of doing those every year or so is always nice just to kind of make sure that you're staying up to speed. So yeah, this is my presentation. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to stay around for questions, but that's the end of mine. So.
Mm, thank you so much. I definitely am going to open it up to everybody else, but while they kind of get their brains going about what kind of questions, I wanted to start it off with as far as like getting started in social media marketing, all of that. What type of like degrees or certifications do you recommend? Like what kind of makes you competitive
That's
for
a great
jobs? Sorry.
question. Yeah, um it can be very like challenging to get your name out there, but honestly, having good portfolio, I would say is even more important than having degrees or classes, but having continued education and professional development, like people always love seeing that on resumes. So doing these free courses is always great. Um, my degree in nonprofit leadership and management, about 30% of the courses were based on marketing. So that really helped strengthen, my experience. But otherwise, like jumping in and getting the work done is really how I've gotten it. But speaking to the trends and like your impact and like, oh, this post actually reached 3,000 people, or this campaign actually got the organization so much attention that they end up, or this ad end up getting a return of investment of $3,000 when they only spent 300. So knowing those numbers is really going to be what telling your story does for employers, or what's going to catch their eye. It's how are you going to use their story to, to share their message to build trust within the organization. So that's another reason why the analytics is so important. So you can tell how you help their brand, and have an understanding of what you do. I think those are really a good place to get started. And then, having that profile. So taking like screenshots of your best posts and things like that. And for your own resume, keeping those handy is really helpful,
Awesome.
especially
Thank
if you
you.
go into freelancing. Yeah.
And there was another one in the comments saying, apparently we love Canva and everyone uses Canva, but do you have any other recommendations on design platforms that you might find useful?
Yes. So let's see. In one of my slides, I actually linked to Adobe Express. It's free. I definitely consider it for people who are, getting started. Obviously, Canva is wonderful. Not everyone, and you'll see a lot of the same things. So sometimes I'll just stay in Canva because that's what my rest of my team has access to. But when
Mhm.
I develop more printed materials or things that are going to be like a big banner, um, things that are not for social media or for graphic design, that is when I want to use Adobe products. So Adobe Express can be very helpful. And they also provide just a different look of templates since everyone's kind of using Canva now. It's kind of like a good little refresh. So I really think that's a good place to get started if you want to get into that. And let's see. Oh yeah, and then premium is free for nonprofits. So that's great. But Adobe Express is free. And then if you have the Adobe suite, the cloud suite, then you can actually like save your Adobe font and access it there. And you have a lot more access to fonts. So that's really great.
You're reading it. Okay.
Adobe Express can have a learning curve, like um but when you want to do something, you just Google it and then you follow the instructions, and usually you can get by pretty far with that. And then you learn to do it yourself, and so you know it for next time. So that's really helpful. And there's a lot of quick little YouTube tutorials and things like that, especially on even on TikTok. I'm often scrolling through and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save that for later and figure out how to change that big font like that. So you just, you are learning the whole time, but that's really the role. It's, you're always going to be learning new things. Social media changes really quick. And I'm reading this question regarding privacy issues.
Mhm.
Some nonprofits are working with sensitive cases. Yeah, so Knowing what your organization does regarding privacy is really important. So for my organization, we do work with children, but we do have a policy where if they when during enrollment, they actually approve while they're in the building that we can take their photo, and then we can use it. We do go to the individual and get signed express consent as well afterwards, especially if it's going to be for like a printed campaign or they're going to be our face for the guitar classes. So those are important. While I was working at other organizations as well as my time at the university, it was really important not to capture faces. So knowing to capture the back of the students, really engaging in something interesting, but you don't really see their faces. That's really important. So that's something that that's another thing you can do around that. Um, if it's in a public space, you can also just have signs that say if you're in this area, you're giving permission to be photographed, which can also work, especially if you have it like at a park or something like that. That's how we've kind of gotten around that. But staying within what you're allowed to do is always what I suggest. You can also use like stock images and things like that to tell your story. And that's when like Unsplash is a really good resource to find stock images that aren't going to be on everyone's campaigns. So it's just something to also keep in mind. And to also talk about the trauma, I want to also talk about like not leveraging a story just for likes and engagement. You want to make sure that you're telling a story with integrity and thoughtfulness and respect. So, for example, we wouldn't want to um, really pull on the heartstrings that would especially if it would make the person it's about feel weird or feel bad or feel like that they aren't not, being respected in a way. Like this organization might help them, but you would want to position that as like they had a need that we identified and we were there to support rather than they would have been desperate without us. So really keeping that in mind and being thoughtfulness on how you're communicating and the language you're using um, is really important. There was a Big Duck is an organization that I would suggest everyone else to follow. So it's BIGDUCK, and they have a list of glossary words and they'll suggest words to use cautiously, phrases that are maybe no longer as politically correct as they once were. So, for example, we try not to use the phrase homeless. We say people who are unhoused to really be person first language and really being respectful of that person. So, those are all things to keep in mind. So they'll be providing this presentation afterwards, which will have all the links embedded into it. So you'll get that later on today. Or maybe tomorrow. I'm not really sure when they'll send it out, but you'll be getting it, I promise.
We'll also put it on our YouTube channel, so people can go back and actually watch you do this, in addition to having the clickable resources. Does anybody else have any questions? I think my internet might be going sideways, but does anybody else have any questions or anything for our speaker? Oh no.
I
Thank you,
see.
Lily. That was great.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys having me. It was really wonderful to share this, and I'm really excited to see everything that you guys do in the world. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun stories.
For sure. And yes, thank you so much for all of your knowledge. That was an incredibly in-depth presentation. So thank you again for that. And I know that a lot of us might not be working day to day with social media, but take this information and share it with somebody at your site or use it to start getting connected with social media. I'm like 90% sure everything is glitching. And if it is, I'm so sorry.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I will
Well,
definitely,
if you
I'll throw
guys,
my
oh,
LinkedIn in the chat for anybody and also my email.
cool beans.
If you have any questions or, want any second thoughts, I'd be happy to meet with anybody.
Thank you. Sorry,
Okay,
Matt, that's
thank
going
you.
out.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. And would it be okay if I log off or do you want me to stay on for a little bit?
You are more than welcome to log off, Lily.
Yes, yeah.
We appreciate you. If anyone has any questions, we'll refer them to your email and your LinkedIn account.
Great.
Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions that you would like to save for a more intimate group, some of the program staff will stay on the call. Otherwise, you are welcome to get back to the rest of your day. Thank you for participating.